Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, he's taking shots at the CDC over its response to the Ebola crisis. Paul, who holds a degree in optometry, he says CDC may not be as capable of containing Ebola as it says it is. He says it's a big mistake to downplay and act as if it's, oh, this is not a big deal, we can control this. This could get beyond our control. I'm just curious, I'm not saying he did or didn't cross the line, but where do you think, Dom, the line is when you're talking about health issues, national issues, and you have the CDC, which everyone has always seemingly taken as gospel if they say, we can't contain this, this is where the situation is. If a lawmaker says, don't trust them.
I think Senator Paul is 1,000% correct. And I think we're at the warning level right now. And when you look at what's happened, like, as you know, over the weekend I was in Texas, in Dallas. And so I'm worried about, well, what about the plane I flew back on? And this doesn't hit right away. There was no bodily fluids passed that I know of. But, Richard, look at the fact, what's been reported, that this man that's in the hospital in Texas, the sheets that he slept on, and apparently in his girlfriend's apartment, were left there for several days after the fact. They just recently got them after CNN broadcast this. So it's like, it's almost incompetence that's going on. And once this thing starts, it's not going to stop for a while.
I hear you, but I also think there's an inherent danger. I know we're supposed to question authority, and that's certainly the job of the media, and it's the job of an active public. But at a certain point, you got to be careful you don't cry fire in a crowded theater. I'm not saying he's there yet.
Paul has evidence that backs up his concerns. He has a responsibility.
What if he doesn't have evidence?
He didn't, and what he did, he crossed those lines 6 years ago. So the measurement of what constitutes responsible behavior, if they have a chance to make the Obama people look bad, they take it when they're right and they take it when they're wrong.
But
what he did was irresponsible.
Okay. But he's right. But what if he's
right? About CDC?
No, I don't think he was being irresponsible. I think the issue is bigger than that. I mean, I think the federal government, whoever would be in there, Democrat or Republican, in this case Democrat, has to be extraordinarily proactive in getting information out to the public. Because panic can take over in the country, and you can't have that.
What makes you think they're not?
I think the president should do a national address on it.
He didn't criticize the president. He criticized CDC for not taking it seriously. You really think CDC is not taking it seriously?
I think CDC is telling people that it can control this fairly easily in the U.S., and I do think it can get out of control.
I haven't heard that said. You've heard them say we can control this easily.
Oh,
I will say this,
been saying it.
Richard, that they haven't used those words. However, the implication is this is not Sierra Leone. This is not the Sub-Saharan. I know it's not. But their point, though, is they've given the impression that this is highly containable over here. That is
I
not
didn't
the
get
same
that
situation.
impression. Okay,
I've been
other people might have,
every day,
but
so
there ought
right,
to be. Senator Paul ought to have some basis for that kind of a choice.
I think it's fair that you've got to get politics out of this. It's got to be.
And I don't think he necessarily went there with the politics. But what I'm saying is there is a danger if somebody goes out and say, "Don't trust X." In this case, the CDC, you have to have a nonpartisan body that you can trust with national health issues. I think he came really close, maybe even going over the line here. That's all. I want to get to this next one, Bill, and I'll get your take on this. You get George W. Bush now saying, hey, I think Jeb wants this thing, okay? George Pataki met with David Koch recently, and we spoke to a few friends who say, don't dismiss this one. He may seriously be invested in this. You got Mitt Romney, who's raising money here as well. By the way, Jeb Bush helping raise money for your guy as well. Of the three names I mentioned, Romney, Jeb Bush here, and also when we're talking about Pataki, do any of them, are any of them credible at this point that they could get through a primary because they'd run as the moderate?
I think all of them. I think Jeb Bush and Romney in particular, because they've been out there before. I mean, Jeb Bush is a well-known quantity. He's got the last name, which maybe wouldn't have helped him 8 years ago, but it may help him today. He's always.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. Jeb Bush has always been considered kind of a moderate, but also a pretty strong conservative fiscally and the rest of it. I think he'd be a formidable force. I think the nomination could have been his in the past if he really wanted it, if he had that fire in the belly. His brother, former President George W. Bush, today said that he thinks he has that.
But you don't think that Romney, I mean, after what happened, what would be 4 years earlier if he runs again.
I think if Jeb Bush stepped forward, I think Romney would not, certainly, and I don't think he does anyway. Yeah. And I think George Pataki is serious this time. I think he's really putting together a run.
Chance,
I think he is.
No. In a party that will nominate none of those guys because they're crazy right-wingers in Iowa, Kansas, and California, and even in New York right now, as we saw in the primary in Buffalo. The guy who was easiest to underestimate is George.
It's George Pataki, yeah.
He fooled a lot of people on the right in New York quite successfully. He's a thoughtful guy. He can present himself well. He got out with his record intact. And he doesn't bring both. If Bush is the candidate, you're going to relitigate 2000. If Romney's the candidate, you're going to relitigate 2012. George is, if you can believe it, a fresh new face. He may not do it, but don't underestimate him.
If he's an unknown quantity,
he's a very bright guy.
He ain't a ball of fire. And it's not like people wanted anybody but Cuomo in this particular case. You got to convince people that you're the guy, right? And with all due respect, he's not the personality.
That's the underestimating part about him. He has this aw shucks appeal.
He does.
He's not an aw shucks guy.
He does.
No. 30 seconds now.
What do you think?
In 30 seconds, Governor Pataki has zero chance of being a national president. I don't know what he's smoking tonight.
They said that about running for governor.
But yeah, well, governor was different. So I got about 10 seconds left here. Look at the way Richard is looking at me.
Let's step outside. This is not working.
Jeb Bush could win. And don't discount Romney. Romney is going to run on a pledge of, I told you what would happen with this guy.
Jeb Bush can win a general. He can't win a primary.
You might be right about that. But Pataki, no go.
Rich is going to love this next segment. When we come back here, how the media sometimes doesn't have their act together. A Denver TV host, you people, he walks right in an interview blind and gets called out on it by the actors who very clearly, as you'll see, figured out this guy never saw the movie. That and other examples straight ahead.